Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon. I'm here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
Hello. And yeah, we're going to do kind of, I guess, a mixed bag tonight. I'm going to be doing some live drawing later, which I haven't done in a long time. And I need to do more. I need to do more of. and then we're also going to talk about the comic book industry. We're going to talk about Bill and Ted 3.
Yes.
There's
a lot of third movies that are popping up out of nowhere.
I know, right? Might have some guests on later. Not quite sure yet. We're gonna see how things go. But I think we're gonna talk. About Bill and Ted.
Oh, real quick, they said Birds of Prey. You know, how can you tell? Because there wasn't enough on that thing to even tell. It just was like Harley Quinn walking around like an idiot, you know.
I didn't see
spinning in circles and then flashes everybody else. There wasn't enough there to give me anything that I would be interested in. I think my exact words were, I'm not even interested in this because there's nothing here to make me interested. It was like flash, flash, flash over. Here's more Harley Quinn walking around.
Well, it's basically, why don't they just bite the bullet and just do a Harley Quinn movie? I mean, seriously, why do Suicide Squad? Why not just do Harley Quinn? That's what everybody wants. Just do a Harley Quinn movie.
I don't know. There wasn't enough on, in that trailer for me to, there just wasn't enough there to even make anything out of. I was just like, I have no effing idea. But anyway, go ahead.
Anyway, I'm getting all my screens pulled up. I swear to God, I got like
he literally has 3 screens.
It's the freaking Batcave. We got the Batcave.
We do. It's like there's like all these monitors going.
Yeah,
it's like
I got like my main
secret lair. Just turn the lights off so it looks even more, you know. I had lights on. I should go turn them off.
It's seriously, it's like the Batcave. It's like the Batcave in here. I got my main computer monitor, which is ridiculously huge, and then I got my Wacom to the left, and then I've got my iPad on the other side of that, and I'm like watching everything.
Oh, when we're talking about trailers and stuff, so they had the Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Trailer thing today. I did put it up on the D-Res about it. They had that come up today. Hold on, wait a second. Go ahead.
Okay, E-Hero Andrew, thank you. Did not have to do that. God, we just started. And they're already like...
But God, he has a question.
We do appreciate it. Yeah, I do. How do you apply for an artist job at a comic company, not for Marvel or DC? I'm independent, would like a job. I'd like a little job drawing while in school. It's complicated. It depends on the publisher.
Yeah, they have guidelines and things.
Yeah. Most publishers have guidelines. It depends on where you're going to go. Now, some places do... submissions for creator-owned books like Image and I think Alterna and actually I talked to Peter Simeti. He might actually be on later. I'm not sure yet. But you have to go by their company guidelines. Other publishers do page rates. And I think the only ones that really pay out the page rates now would be your license, but like IDW and Boom they don't pay very much. I'm going to be honest. I've done work for IDW and I never had any personal issues with them, but they do not pay much. And Marvel and DC are very, very hard to get into. Now, it's not impossible, but the days of taking your portfolio to a convention and finding an editor and just doing the portfolio review and getting hired on the spot does not work.
A lot of times they come to you.
Work. Yeah, a lot of times they come to you. I would say the best advice I could give any comics creator now is get your stuff out there online, whether it's a webcomic or DeviantArt.
Oh, it's for Christian comics.
Christian comic book companies.
Which we used to actually be on Christian comic book boards.
I know.
Actually, back in the day, we used to be on the Christian comic book boards.
I'm the poor, unfortunate soul who drew Mecha Manga Bible Heroes.
Right.
Which actually goes for a lot of money on eBay now.
Does it really?
Because I don't think anybody bought it.
We have several copies somewhere. Anyway.
I've got like a whole box of them somewhere. But yeah, I would definitely get your stuff out there. Get your stuff online. Do webcomics.
Well, look at their guideline submissions and see, if they're looking for somebody, and if and what you have to do. I would just follow what they say.
Yeah, and make sure you follow what they say, because if you don't, a lot of times, especially bigger companies that get a ton of submissions, they'll just toss you in
because you didn't follow
the pile.
Guidelines.
But Marvel and DC now are pretty much locked down. Like they kind of come to, I think they come to you. At this point, they really don't. And with them shrinking, like they've got more than enough people, or they'll pull from the minor leagues. They'll pull from like IDW and Boom, companies like that. They're not really. I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's not like it used to be.
Oh yeah, I heard about the shipping of Carmen Sandiego. I have heard about this. I was gonna say about Shield. So they had the special sneak peek trailer thing for Agents of Shield today. Now. I don't know. I mean, I've been watching it. You stopped watching it.
I got bored.
Yeah.
I got bored with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Sorry. After like the first season, I'm like, eh.
So I didn't even know they were doing another season. I hadn't heard anything about it, so I was like, "Oh, they are okay, good, cool." You know, I'm actually the one who watches it, not Neon. And yeah, so they have a trailer for that today. I don't want to spoil it for anybody. If I say things, that's going to spoil it. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it. I really can't. But Fitz is still. They have to go find Fitz in space because the Fitz that was with them is dead. Is dead, and so they have to go get the Fitz who currently exists at the same time with them, and they have to go find him and. There's a bunch of stuff going on. So if you haven't got a chance to check that out, you can go check that out.
I guess they got the Kree and everything in there because they got to get ready for Captain Marvel, right?
They did it last season. So anyway.
Yeah, I couldn't
really,
yeah, I'm with Medicore. I couldn't.
He couldn't do it.
I couldn't do it. I tried, and I'm just not into this. I'm just not feeling it.
So I don't mind it so much, but, you know, like I'm not a hardcore comic book fan either. So I like comic book movies, and I work in comics, but, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, yeah, you know, the Agents of Ghost Rider, they kind of didn't really end that. He kind of just was gone, and then they actually kind of, he was going to come back, and he never did, so I have no idea.
I think that was supposed to be like a backdoor pilot for a Ghost Rider series. It never happened.
That's what I was thinking,
That was kind of like the Inhumans. They had, that was like basically Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. from where I'm saying. It looks like a commercial for all the movies that are coming out and all the TV shows they want to make. So yeah. They build up the Inhumans, and then they launched the Inhumans TV show. It was abysmal. It bombed. It got canceled. They built up Ghost Rider like they were going to launch a Ghost Rider show. It didn't happen. Do
anything with it. Yeah.
And now they're building up the Kree because they're probably trying to get people excited for Captain Marvel. You know, it's a commercial. It is. It's like a weekly commercial for the movies.
Yeah, that's weird. Okay, someone said it was good. I didn't watch it, so I watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
I've heard it. Okay. It did not do well.
So you're gonna talk about Bill and Ted, or are you gonna draw?
I'm gonna talk about Bill and Ted, and I'll draw later. I'm gonna come back to this.
I can tell you what's going on without you having to leave, but okay. So now they're saying it might be out for Christmas because they're supposed to start filming on January 10th, but supposedly they're having Bill and Ted back. They're having
Bill and Ted Face the Music.
Yeah, Face the Music. Yeah.
I wasn't excited about a Bill and Ted 3. I gotta admit, I'm like, oh my god, no! Why are they doing this? Like, Keanu Reeves is better than this now, you know. And I'm like, God, why are we doing so many sequels? Like, way past.
Way it's late. Yeah, I know.
Way late. But I do like the premise. I gotta tell you, I like the premise because they basically said that the premise is gonna be that they're middle-aged dads still trying to crank out a hit song. So. All these years, and they supposedly have this big destiny they're supposed to fulfill, and it hasn't happened for them yet.
So my question is, does knowing your destiny mess up your destiny?
Yeah, maybe.
So anyway, so they're still in San Dimas, yeah. So they're still trying to do it. So they are going to be doing. They're going to recast Rufus, but they kind of have to.
No, they said they won't.
Oh, they said they won't. Oh, they won't
Thank
recast
God.
Rufus.
You cannot recast George Carlin.
No, you
that would be sacrilege.
No, you can't.
Sacrilege.
And then what else they say? So it's going to be Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter again. And what else do we know?
It's
Probably.
supposed to come out by Christmas. They'd like to get it into theaters by Christmas 2019. They haven't even filmed it yet. That's really
pushing it, though. They just started filming it. No, I mean, I was going to probably wouldn't need such special effects, but you probably will need special effects.
Yeah, unless they do it really low budget like the first one. Second one had a lot more special effects, but I'm like, God, I don't want CG. No, I don't want CG George Carlin.
No, I don't either. I just don't think that would be good.
If we could hop in the phone booth and bring George Carlin to present day, we need George Carlin today. We need his words of wisdom because he would not put up with the horse shit that's going on.
Yeah, I know, right?
George Carlin on Twitter. Oh, my God.
I was just thinking, he'd be run off of Twitter.
Amazing.
So anyway, yes, we're gonna the Ghostbusters. We did a story about that earlier today.
I love this. This is the best.
Yes, we actually did the story about the kids earlier today. But go ahead, you go ahead and talk about it.
Yeah. So Ghostbusters 3, not the sequel fans wanted. So I did. Yeah, I actually did the story in a video earlier today. Supposedly they had a casting call for the lead character of Ghostbusters 3, which is a 12-year-old autistic girl who's fascinated with science. She's the lead character. Now, what we don't know is, is she going to be a 12-year-old kid in the whole film, or is this like a flashback sequence?
But I thought you said they made it sound like she was the main character.
They made it sound like this is the main character, because if they were going to do a flashback, they would cast the adults first, and then find kids
that look like them.
Right,
that makes sense.
So I think that's what they're doing. I think they're doing a Ghostbusters 3 with the couple of 12 and 13-year-olds.
Honestly, and they mentioned it too. I honestly think it's because of Stranger Things. I think it's because Stranger Things is big, and because someone actually said that they said because of the kids in Stranger Things and Ghostbusters outfits, what they thought of it. So it's because Stranger Things, and then you have like the House of the Clock in the Walls, and you had like Goosebumps. The last Goosebumps movie was just the first one was actually not too bad. The last one was just, I don't know what that was. So, they're trying to cash in on that. And I think they're thinking, we're just going to start them young and make a new audience so we can make more movies for this new, because they wanted to make it the Cinematic universe, didn't they?
Is that, yeah, I think they're looking at it as like a franchise, right?
Right, you need fans for that. Start them young.
You hear, Andrew, thank you, didn't have to do that. Kids in Ghostbusters 3 makes no sense. Child labor laws.
Well, they have lots of kids in shows, but...
Yeah, I think if they're over a certain age, but, yeah, I don't know. This is crazy. This is... I don't think this is what anybody wanted. I mean, they definitely didn't want the all-female reboot. Everybody was excited when they were going to do, with Ghostbusters 3 taking place in the same universe. They, had all the feels, having the Ecto-1 in the barn and all that, and basically, this. Basically this. It's like, hey, we're going to do a Ghostbusters 3, but it's going to be all kids.
I honestly think like I said, they're trying to do it because of Stranger Things. Because like I said on Twitter, I think it was a comment on the video, that it seems like in Hollywood, there's only 5 to 10% maybe that are innovators. The other 90 to 95% are just repurposers. Yeah. So like, what's popular? What's cool and new and hip? Stranger Things. Oh my God, let's cash in on that. And then the thing is, I think what they're thinking too is, like, if we start the kids young, then they can, as they grow up, we could do more, and we can start, because then they wanted to make it its own universe, cinematic universe, and we can just move on with the new audience, is what I think they're thinking.
Yeah, and they're thinking, well, these kids, they can kind of age into the role. I don't know what they're thinking. I mean, we don't know much about it.
No, it could be nothing,
Yeah, they could be, I don't know. It's a weird choice. It's a
maybe
weird
they're
choice.
Just the kid versions, but it is odd that they'd get the kid versions first.
Right, like, we know people don't want Ghostbusters 2016. We know they don't want a reboot. So what do? We just do a movie with all kids. It's like, that's not gonna work. That's not gonna work. Not gonna work.
I don't know what they're thinking. But, I don't know what they're thinking either. That's what's going on right now that we know of. Of course, we'll let you know if we find anything else out, but that's where that is at this point in time.
Actually, the news has been, like, really slow. I love this, though. Well, I guess we could start talking comic books, right?
I guess.
That's what we're going to talk about. Normally we don't really go into the comic stuff too much. But we did work in comics in the past. We're going to be doing some independent comic projects here in the not too distant future. But, yeah, the comic book industry is so funny. They were kind of gloating that the graphic novel sales were up in 2018, and everything's good. We're better. Everything's awesome. And then, actually, no. Diamond had to dial it back a little bit, and they sent a correction out. This is funny. This is coming from Graphic Policy. This is like last week. After initially announcing that 2018's annual sales for comics has increased, Diamond Comic Distribution has sent out a correction that, in fact, is not the case. Compared to 2017, 2018's comic and graphic novel sales were down both in units and dollars. The distributor had previously reported that dollar sales were up. In reality, that wasn't true.
Oh, surprise.
Diamond has sent out a correction with overall comic and graphic novel sales down over 1% compared to 2017, and units down almost 6%. Over the same time period.
But what about the graphic novels? Because that doesn't affect the graphic novels. The graphic novels are going to save us. That's the answer you always hear. Well, that's just the floppies. That's not the graphic novels.
Well, graphic novel sales have actually been on the decline. At least in the direct market, they've been on the decline for the last couple of years now. Going back to, let's see here, 2017, they were down 5%. And I read somewhere they were down like 12% after they pulled the New York Times bestseller list.
Yeah, because you couldn't cheat it anymore.
You couldn't cheat it anymore.
Well, that's the truth.
And this is BookScan.
I'm having a drink.
So people, yeah, we're drinking. I'm drinking. You're not drinking anything hard. You'd be drinking something harder.
I'm drinking Dr. Pepper. It's hard enough for me tonight.
Okay. Well, I'm drinking the hard stuff. So, yeah, and this is coming from BookScan. This is, sales to bookstores, not just comic shops. Let's see. William Sorrells, thank you. Didn't have to do that. Did you see the new Carmen cartoon yet? Part of it.
Yes.
The entire series is on YouTube.
Yes, a part of it. Our daughter watched the whole thing. She very much likes it.
Yeah, she does. She does.
I haven't only got to see a couple episodes of it. I gotta catch up on that. But she watched it and she said it was really good and she likes it quite a bit.
Oh, hey, Peter is in the chat. Hello, Peter. Hey, hey, hey. Feel free if you want to call in, Peter. You're more than welcome to. We're just kind of just starting the conversation on comic books. You missed Bill and Ted. You missed Bill and Ted. I am drinking.
Tom and Jerry Kids was bad. Yeah.
Oh, Tom and Jerry Kids. That was bad. That was bad. So anyway, yeah, it looks like things are not as good as they tried to make them out to be. Dialing in now. Oh, Peter's gonna be on the line. Hold on. Let's see if we can get him in here.
Now it's just dead silence.
It's dead silence as we wait for Peter.
Someone has to let him in.
Simeti to come in.
He says someone has to let him in.
I have to let him in.
Are you reading? You know, you don't read. You don't pay
someone
attention.
has to let me in. There we go. There we go. Should we let Peter in? We'll let Peter in.
I guess.
Hello, Peter. Are you there? It's going great. Hey, thank you. Can everyone hear Peter before we continue and have like all these awkward pauses in the video, right?
Where Peter would have been. Up.
Let me know we can hear Peter. Decline. No. No, 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 no. 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 Nobody
they can't hear you.
Nobody can hear
Again?
Peter. Oh.
This happened before. Hold on. Do you know how you fixed it?
Nobody can hear Peter. No Peter.
Hold on. You've got to see if you can fix it.
Okay, what is going on here? All right, just start saying something.
Can you hear it?
Hello, hello? Murmur is all I hear. I hear Peter just fine.
There's a little delay, so hold on a second. No, he's not drunk again.
Turn up the volume.
Did you turn it up?
Too low. Can't hear Peter. Press F for fail.
He failed.
No!
Okay, turn it up. Can you turn it up?
I am trying to turn it up as much as I can here. Let me see. I've got it cranked up the whole way. It is cranked. The volume is low. Oh, no.
This happened before.
This did happen before. Let me see here.
He's looking.
Yeah, I can hear you totally fine. I can hear you totally fine. So I'm not sure what they're talking about. Maybe everybody else is drinking.
No, I think you didn't do something right.
I didn't do something right.
This happened before.
Okay, why don't you try talking now?
Hey, how's it going? Hopefully people can hear me. Yeah, it looks like the mic on my end is fine.
It sounds fine to me.
Yeah.
Is he in space? No. Sound card needs a boost. We ran out.
I can heard myself just now in the chat. Looks like everybody says that they're good to go.
Oh, good.
Oh, they're good. They're good. They're good.
Okay, cool. This is
fixed.
the wonders of live YouTube, right? We never know what's going to work. I appreciate you joining us on short notice, Peter. We decided we're going to talk about comic books a little bit tonight, and thought I'd reach out and see if Peter wanted to give his 2 cents.
Yeah, I can give you a nickel if you'd like.
Yeah, that'd be great. So explain to me, and actually I think I might have seen it on your Twitter timeline. This deal with Diamond, they had to walk it back. They had to walk their initial numbers back.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people thought it was a little weird when it first got released that it was an uptick in, not necessarily in units sold, but in sales, only because everyone else in the industry is looking around going, is this the way it was for you? Because we were all completely confused by it.
Yeah.
And none of the numbers added up. But then when they re-released what was actually the correct numbers, everybody else thought, oh, okay, yeah, that makes more sense. This kind of lines up with what we were all following the whole time.
Yeah, and it's a pretty, it's a pretty steep drop. I mean, the trend is continuing. We just pulled up an article from Comics Beat from last year where, particularly worrying is graphic novel sales. At least in the direct market, they're down a lot. I mean, they're down.
And I mean, honestly, for those that don't know, too, Alterna mostly just put out graphic novels for our first 10 or 11 years, and for the last 2 years, we've been focusing more on the lower priced $1.50 single issues. And the biggest reason for me wanting to do that switch was because I was seeing the graphic novel market starting to become flooded about 3 years ago, and that the whole space was starting to decline and plateau. At the time, it was plateauing a bit, and I thought that was bad considering how much attention was given towards graphic novels. But now I mean, the past 2 years, I think combined, it's like a 18% or so decline from what it was in 2016. That's not good, but that's something that we've been seeing for a while now.
Yeah, I mean, I remember they had like a 12% drop. I think it was last year. What was that, Geeky?
No, I was just going to say it's funny because every time people talk about the comic sales, there's always these people that come back with, but the graphic novels are up. Graphic novels are doing great. Graphic novels are fantastic. And I thought it was hilarious because then this came out and I was like, ha, see?
And the thing is, for some creators and publishers, they absolutely are. There's some creators that are killing it, but the thing is, it's not the traditional creators or companies that we would be thinking about. And it's because they know how to operate in that space because they're more familiar with the book industry, whereas these comic publishers are kind of almost jumping on the bandwagon that started getting a lot of hype about 10 years ago. And I think they just got complacent with it, thinking that they just needed to be there and then the success would follow. Not that they actually had to push and get people acclimated to that market. And I don't think that they managed to take any consideration into the fact that you can't just be in the space and succeed. You also have to market it. But if anything, comic industry stuff we're always getting hurt because of the lack of marketing.
Yeah, let me read a few super chats here, Peter, and then we'll continue. Hero Andrew, thank you. Did not have to do that. Heard manga sales are doing better in sales. I actually have heard that too. I've heard manga's actually on an upswing right now. And William Sorrells, thank you. Didn't have to do that. If the comic series won't sell, why do you think the graphic novels will?
Example: Rainbow Bright.
Will Rainbow Bright was poorly thought out.
Yeah.
I don't know what they were thinking. Let's make a comic that's absolutely nothing like Rainbow Bright. Everybody needs a drink. I'm sure Peter's drinking a lot these days. Now, you guys at Alterna, I am just really fascinated with the situation because everybody else is hurting. They're hurting, but Alterna's sales are actually on the upswing.
Yeah, I can't keep up with it. I have literally no free time. The past 4 days in a row, I've been packing books for like 14 to 16 hours almost straight. I'm almost delusional. I've been packing books. I'm packing books right now. So
it's okay if we hear the tape. That's
yeah, exactly. So we keep doing really, really well. But what's frustrating is that where we're succeeding is not exactly through traditional markets. We're not really succeeding and having this big boost through distribution. We're having a big boost through direct sales. It's an astronomical boost. It's 1,700% increase from last year, and last year was a 700% increase from the year before that of our direct sales. Mm-hmm. But in terms of distribution sales, I think they went down about 8 to 10% this year for us, and it's a shame to me because this is a big boost for us, but the comic shops aren't seeing that because they're not getting our books in. They think, for some reason, a lot of them think $1.50 book, who's going to buy that and this and that and whatever, especially from an indie company. But if they took a look at our social media, they'd see we've got one of the largest social media followings of all in comics, and people are very interested in our books, and they're good books too. And I wish they would get them in because not only then would the sales go to the shops, but then I could actually focus on other things and not just packing orders all the time.
Yeah, that's actually kind of a good problem to have. And it's interesting because there's all this kind of doom and gloom about the direct market. But talking about indie comics, I know Kickstarter put this out. They put this out earlier in the week. They said that they had a record crowdfunding, 16 million in 2018. So it looks like from where I'm sitting, the mainstream comic book industry might be on the decline, but it looks like indies are definitely on the upswing.
And I think we would see a lot of that success spill over into traditional comic markets if distribution was able to actually get an aggregate system going where you can go onto the website, previewsworld.com, which would be Diamond's site there, and do a ship to store feature for all these comics that they pre-order and have people pay in advance, because all these people say, oh, well, you can't take money in advance for pre-orders because people don't want to pay for things when they don't have them in hand. That's completely insane, because we most of our sales stem from people doing an entire year subscription to our books, and it'll be $100 sale or so right then and there, and then we ship them out monthly to them. So if they're going to pay that for us for a whole year, of course people will pay for a pre-order on a book. You know, 2 months that's going to come out, and I just don't understand that kind of thing. It doesn't make any sense to me. It is something where we're leaving money on the table in terms of the whole entire industry, and then it's making it very difficult because you have that ease of use with all these things like Kickstarter, Indiegogo, ordering direct from us, going on eBay, all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to getting comics in the shop, they still want you to fill out this paper form and then bring it in and then drive your poor local comic shop insane by, you know, trying to decipher your handwriting or whatever it is. And then there's room for error. And then people don't come up and pick up their pull lists. So they get stuck with a lot of pre-orders that no one's paid for. And this kind of thing is hurting shops and closing a lot of them because it's just a basic, simple business practice of have people pay for the things that they're ordering. And if they don't come in, they get canceled, whatever it is, you give them a refund. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, it works with crowdfunding, right? I mean, people are paying for projects that aren't even complete yet.
Absolutely.
And they've been doing it, you know, fairly successfully. So I mean, really, I think fundamentally, like, the comic book industry is going to have to just rethink its whole game plan because clearly this does not work. I mean, I pulled up before we started the stream, you know, just 15 hours ago. Here's another comic shop going out of business. Folsom Comics. He's closing up shops after closing up his shop, Comic Universe, after 40 years. 40 years he's going out of business. Mile High, of course, closed their store in Denver. Big, huge, massive store. They closed it. Bleeding Cool, you know, I took all the ads off because I don't want a virus on my computer. But you know, here's an ongoing list of all the comic shops that have just closed in the last year. It's insane. This is not working anymore. Why can't they see that this doesn't work?
Yeah, and that was the Bleeding Cool list from last year too that got announced. Whereas from 2017, whereas this year for 2018. The last time I checked, even just from my own personal numbers of keeping track with the stores that we do business with, it was something like 30 out of the 320 stores that we do business with are gone.
Wow.
And that's just, there's about 2,000 shops. So if you just kind of take our numbers and make them proportional to the whole industry, we're probably talking about close to, you know, 70, 80 shops that are now gone. Everyone is thinking, because this kind of stuff snowballs.
Yeah.
And especially if the companies that have the biggest market shares and the most control and the most ability to make a positive impact, if they don't do anything different to help out, what's going to happen is we're going to have more stores closing. We're going to have more people impacted by this. And it's up to the indie companies and the indie creators to realize this is a good time to fill in the vacuum that these bigger companies, they're kind of just leaving everybody to languish and just kind of suffer out there. And it's up to us to kind of step in and help out. Yeah,
and it seems like you know, anymore it's almost like up to the individual creator too. Like if you want to make a look, we had someone earlier ask us about breaking into comics. I'm like, it doesn't work the way it used to work. You used to just take your portfolio to a convention. If an editor liked your stuff, they'd hire you. And now you're pretty much on your own. Like, you have to do a lot of legwork yourself or build a following online. That's what we did with our webcomics. And, you know, kind of cultivate that audience yourself. Because, you know, Marvel and DC, I mean, they're going to be hiring from the minor leagues, Booms and IDWs, and those jobs are getting harder to find. And, you know, I just think more and more, if you want to make comics, like, you're going to have to look at creator-owned stuff.
And that's what I find is so funny, is because a lot of these companies, the bigger ones, they say, well, build up your online presence, build up your book, build up your following, and then we'll consider hiring you. Well, at that point, once you're that big, who needs to work for Marvel and DC? Continue doing your own thing. Continue making your own stuff. So, of course, you know, they say that to kind of give everybody that little dangling, the little carrot in front of their face. But what they really do then is they go to these other indie kind of sites and things like that, and they look at the books that are sort of kind of doing okay. And they take those creators and they offer them positions because of the fact that they're cheaper, they're easier in some ways, they're easier to manipulate because they're not too familiar with the industry. And they're basically taking advantage of people who are kind of green behind the ears. Yeah. And they're going to be very grateful to be a part of a bigger company like that. But of course, it's a big business. Big business does not look necessarily to hire A-list talent consistently. They're going to always look to cut costs, especially in an industry like comics, where, you know, for better or worse, it mostly what's drawing people to a book is the character, not necessarily the creator.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it's like these creators they might even have a larger online following, but they're not really pulling the numbers in the mainstream because the mainstream industry doesn't know who they are, you know. Real quick, I got a couple of super chats. William Sorrells, thank you again. If mainstream comics didn't get woke, sales wouldn't be nearly as bad. Well, I think it's complicated, but that definitely, the politics definitely are not helping. They're really narrowing their potential customer base, in my opinion. E-Hero Andrew, this is probably a question for you, Peter. What are the best ways to promote my comics?
The best way to promote your comic is, especially if you're working on it and you've got art to show, make sure to show some work in progress shots. Make sure to get interactive with your audience. Make sure that you always come from a point of, I want to share this with people, as opposed to, I want to sell this to people. A lot of people, they look at that, and as far as promotion, and they go, well, I don't feel too comfortable with telling people, oh, hey, here's something, go buy it. Especially when I'm not doing this for such a long time, they feel like, you know, I feel weird by doing that. So always approach it from the angle that you just want to share something with people. You just want to get them involved. You want their feedback. And if people tell you that they don't like it, people tell you, you know, oh, you suck, you should stop, or whatever it is, don't engage with that kind of reaction. They don't know everything you've been through or what you're trying to grow or what you're trying to do. Just take into consideration how many people seem to like what you're doing, how many people don't seem to like what you're doing, and see, does that correlate at all with anything that you are feeling about your own work? And you have to be very honest with yourself as well, because everyone knows areas they can improve upon. So don't be afraid to acknowledge if you need to improve in certain areas and things like that. But the best place to promote, I find, is Instagram and Twitter so far have been really good for us. Facebook's okay, but some of the best feedback you're going to get is always going to be if you take your stuff to a show, a convention, and you go around the artist alley and you say, look, be really honest with me. Tell me, what do you think? What can I improve upon? What can I do? And you have to be prepared for that honesty. If you're not, take a step back and realize maybe a creative field is not for me. But that's the best way to go about it. You always want to make sure you want to share stuff with people. You want to make sure you want to grow and improve and learn.
Yeah. Hey, Geeky, what
wait, quick. Before you said about honesty, people have to understand, too, there is a difference between negativity and honesty. And I see this trend anymore where if you say anything, even you're trying to be nice, you're trying to help them out. And sometimes they ask for it, and then you tell them. I try not to give people any advice when they don't ask me for it. But then they're like, well, you're just negative. And it's like, no, there's a difference between honesty and negativity. They're not the same thing. But I was going to say something because Riot Kitty had said about, I'm trying to find where she put it, about have fun with promotion and skits and stuff. I was going to tell a funny little story. So when we were trying to do it for, it was Patreon, wasn't it? Where we were trying to get stuff with our comic on Patreon.
Oh, yeah.
So we made these stupid paper puppets on sticks of ourselves. I don't even know where it happened to it, but it was funny as heck. And we had this thing where actually Neon lit himself on fire, like literally lit his character on fire on purpose.
The character, not myself.
No, it was the character of him. People loved it, and then our son was reading this like list of disclaimers. It was like one of those drug commercials where it's like side effects may include, and we had him read this list of stuff. It was funny, but anyway, it just reminded me of that, and it got a lot of attention because it was funny. So sorry, I just.
No, that was.
I don't know what happened to it.
I don't know. Even at conventions, like you have to stand out a little bit. And,
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny though, because like what we're seeing right now, just coming from the webcomic side of it, a lot of the things that webcomics people have been doing for a while. It seems like
it's pretty much webcomics.
Like a lot of smaller press or even mainstream publishers are kind of starting to go that route too.
I agree.
Crowdsourcing the books. I mean, webcomics people were doing that like 15 years ago before they even had Kickstarter, and making that connection online, building that audience online, because they realized they weren't going to be able to sell their books through the system their stuff just was not going to sell, so they had to find people someplace else. So I don't think your comics career depends on whether or not you can get your book into Diamond, because Diamond, it seems to be meaning less and less.
Oh yeah, if people tell me all the time right now, they want to start a publishing company, they want to get into selling their comic into stores and all this other stuff. And honestly, if we were starting today, if I decided I want to start Alterna today, and I had the knowledge that I've had for the past 13 years, I would not want to go through traditional distribution. I would reach out to stores instead. I would set up websites. I would sell direct. I would do all that kind of stuff, because right now, you're talking about when you go into distribution, it's pretty much a 3-to-1 kind of system. Whereas if I could sell one comic direct, that's the equivalent of selling 3 to distribution. So if you sold 3,000 comics through distribution, that's basically like selling 1,000 direct. It's not the kind of system that's skewed anymore towards bigger numbers. You're talking about, you're lucky nowadays if you can sell 3,000 comics. That's insane. We shouldn't be in a system like this where we do backflips if we sell, even 5,000. That's ridiculous. The whole thing is so skewed in such a weird way. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, there are people, I know people personally who have actually made a living self-publishing comics, for years. They just kind of, each year they put a new book out or whatever, and they've got their diehard audience out there. And a lot of these people have never sold a book through Diamond. Because we talked to Diamond before about our book, and they were like, well, you guys only put a book out like once a year. That's
you
not...
had to have, they said you're better off to have multiples a year, because if you won't do so much a year, that they won't work with you. And it wasn't worth it. And we had 1,000 copies of ours, and we sold all of them, except for I think there's 9 left. There's 9 left.
There were like 9 left. Yeah, we really didn't even try. A lot of them we just sold through Amazon. We sold them at conventions. It wasn't something we really tried to push, really. But yeah, Diamond was never really an issue. It was never really something we wanted to do. And I just don't think it's going to work for a lot of people now, especially with, there are fewer shops, right? So where are you going to sell your books if the shops are all closing? How are you going to sell your books?
Yeah, well, that's the other part too, is that we received, and I found out a bunch of other publishers received this too, and I think it's just smaller publishers, honestly. A letter from Diamond talking about sales benchmarks and evaluating product, whether or not they're going to choose to want to even carry it and distribute it based on sales history and all this other stuff. So I see that, and I immediately go, well, if it's a new creator or something like that, how are you going to determine sales history? If you're going to start looking at publisher, that's insanity, because you could have a book that does really well at one publisher and then 10 other books at that same publisher that don't do very well at all. But so if you're looking at what they were talking about, if I take what they were talking about at face value, to me that looks as if they're going to start limiting the market. And based on whose opinion, one only can tell. I have no idea who's going to be evaluating these things and on what criteria. So on that factor too, the last time that I heard of benchmarks from Diamond in terms of sales, that was like when we first entered in 2008. In 2008, there was about 4,000 comic shops.
Right, it's a lot different then,
Yeah, so if you cut those shops in half, is my sales benchmark now cut in half?
Yeah, I'm sure that's not. But yeah, it should be, but they're not going to do that.
But yeah, so what criteria are there here? These kind of weird emails that are almost more intimidation than any kind of helpful business strategy involved, it doesn't help the whole thing. It makes it, it's already a very difficult business, especially if you're a smaller publisher. But when you go like that, and you, instead of going, here's some strategy and helpful things you guys can do to boost your sales, and instead it turns into, you're out on your own, trial by fire. If you don't survive this insanity we're putting past you, well, too bad, you're gone. Well, now all you're going to do is you're going to make the market even smaller than it already is. People already talk about things like diversity in the comic industry. How are you increasing diversity in the industry if you plan on eliminating smaller publishers? That doesn't make any sense. The whole thing is just completely backwards.
Yeah, we've been trying to, tell people, like, again, going back to younger creators who want to get into comics, like, you're gonna have to build your own life raft. You're gonna have to build your own platform. You cannot depend on the publishers to take care of you. It just seems more and more. Obviously, Diamond is not where it's at right now. So,
No.
I think more and more we're going to see companies, like Alterna, that are basically like, we're going to do a lot of our sales direct to consumer, because I don't see any other option. I really don't.
Well, that's the other part too, is that it's not all doom and gloom. I know some people think, oh wow, we're hearing all this bad news about the comic industry and all this other stuff. It's, if anything, right now is the best time to be an indie creator. It is the best time to have a creator-owned property. It is the best time to start really focusing on your comic and reaching people directly. You can have great success by doing that. You don't necessarily need to go through comic shops. You can get comic shops involved, though, because more of them now are starting to become keen on purchasing direct. So if you can get your comic printed up to a point where you can offer a discount to the retailer, that's going to benefit you, and it's going to get your book into stores without actually having to go through a distributor. We already deal with, I think, 50 stores direct as well, because we sell to stores directly on top of going through Diamond. But right now, I know everyone's scared about the industry and thinking it's going to collapse or whatever. It's going to change. It's not necessarily going to collapse, but it's important for people to understand that they can still do a lot and have great success by doing things outside the box and taking a different approach. They're not just beholden to an industry that has kind of gone a bit backwards with how they're doing stuff.
Yeah, and that's why we keep advocating too. We keep telling everybody that, you can make your own things. Don't let, we've been saying the same things. Like, just because they're falling apart, it's actually an opportunity. So use it. So were you gonna say something, honey?
No, I was just saying that, it is an opportunity for indie creators. Again, you want to be ahead of the curve. You don't want to wait until everything's so saturated.
Which one?
Yep, that one right there.
Okay, good.
There we go.
Sorry, we had to shut that down. Sorry,
but I think it's just scary because, again, this is the same kind of disruption that I think happened with the direct market. When the direct market came along, it definitely changed things. It actually made more opportunities for indie creators at that point. Books that maybe weren't sustainable in 7-Eleven or whatever, they could get picked up in comic shops. And right now, I mean, you can publish virtually anything as long as you have an audience for it and just sell it to them directly.
Anything else?
Quiet all of a sudden. No. I'm trying to gather my thoughts here. But yeah, we always have people come up and they're always kind of like, how do I break into comics? And I mean, I keep telling people, like, you're gonna have to do it yourself. You're gonna have to break in yourself.
Someone wants you to explain what it means by direct market.
Okay. Do we still have Peter?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. He's packing stuff up.
This guy's busy. Yeah.
The direct market is in a nutshell comic book shops. They sort of popped up in the late 70s, early 80s. Selling books. Well, now it's all Diamond. Peter might have a better grasp of how all that works, but basically, if you're buying from a comic book shop, chances are that's the direct market. So
yeah, the direct market too. It's a funny thing because when it first got started, it's the reason why you might have 2 copies of the same comic, a Marvel comic, I'll say in particular, from the 80s, and one of them has a Spider-Man logo in the bottom, and the other one has a barcode. And the barcode was newsstand, and the Spider-Man head there was for the direct market because they didn't really have the POS systems that they have now. They didn't really scan the barcodes through. So that's the way they told the difference between the direct market copies and the newsstand copies. But now where everything's been barcoded and all that kind of stuff, I think we're one of the only publishers that still has stuff on newsstand and the direct market, as it were, with comic shops.
So, let me pull up the chat window here again. I'm trying to multitask. I'm not good at multitasking.
No, I'm better
and I'm
at it than you are.
multitasking with alcohol, too. What about selling comics via online store? That seems to be the way more and more people are doing it. I know you have an Etsy store that you guys sell?
Yeah. We've got an Etsy store. Easy way to get to it is orderalterna.com. And we sell online there. We just got stuff listed up on eBay only because people were having a really hard time justifying purchases on eBay, because so many people were kind of selling them for way more than the cover price, which is flattering because we sell them in as many places as we can get, and then yet still people were selling them on eBay and managing to sell them too for more. But now they're just everywhere in terms of how to get them. It's just unfortunate that we have an easier time. There's newsstands in Poland that have our comics, and it's weird that it's easier to get them in Poland than it is sometimes to get them in comic shops in the U.S.
Oh wow, yeah. Because actually, I was looking. Now we're in Pennsylvania, and I was looking for shops, and there's only a handful in Pennsylvania that actually carry alternatives. Seems like most of them are in Pittsburgh. So
well, that makes sense because it's
a lot of comic shops in Pittsburgh. But yeah, it's just the distribution is just bad. It's just a lot of the comic shops now. The ones that are surviving are changing their business model. Like the ones that seem to be doing the best are not selling new issues. Like there was one comic shop we did a lot of online sales through them. I got an email. I think it was about 6 months ago. They were not going to carry new issues anymore. They would buy your collections. They would sell back issues. They sell lots of toys and that sort of thing, but they refused to carry new comic book issues, which sucked because they were really good to deal with. But a lot of these shops are getting burnt, I think, on Marvel and DC overstock and stuff that's just not moving. And the shops, have to assume all the risk too, because again, you can't, for the most part, can't return those books.
Yeah, and that's also something that we're starting to do in February. I've already been kind of doing it for the past 2 months now, in terms of buying back books or trading books with retailers. And I actually my local comic shop today, I was just over there giving them new books because they order direct from us. And I was taking books off their hands in exchange for new books, because we keep selling out of books like crazy, and I don't want to keep going back to print over and over again. So I've been trading books with a lot of different stores for about 2 or 3 months now, and we're at a point where I feel comfortable with buying books back, especially when we actually really need books. Right now, I'm begging about 30 stores right now. I hope you have these 15 different titles that we need, because I'm out of all of them. And whatever you guys need, let me know. I'll get them to you. And it's crazy that we're doing stuff like that and trying to lessen the risk for retailers that want to get our books in their store, but yet the industry can't seem to manage to realize the risk has to get spread. It can't just all be on the publishers, and it can't just all be on the retailers. We have to share that risk, and it's weird that this is just the way it's ended up. I don't know how it got here in such a bad way, but this is where we are, so we have to come up with solutions.
I have to wonder if, personally, I think the warning signs were there about a decade ago, and I just think they went ignored. And I remember, again, coming from the webcomic side of things, coming from the indie comics side of things, that these publishers were basically mocking a lot of people who try to do it on their own outside the system.
Oh, yeah, they always do.
It was amateur hour. If you weren't part of Diamond, it's that was sort of the badge of honor, and they just sort of depended too much, I think, on that system always being there, even though there were indie creators who were sort of sounding the alarms, and some consciously decided they just were not going to work in the mainstream comic book industry, at least not go through Diamond or any of that, because it just didn't make any sense. When you could do a Kickstarter for $200,000-$300,000 once a year, why would you try to go through Diamond? I guess if they want your books later, that's fine, but most of the sales were direct to consumer.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that too, with it being about a decade or so ago, because I noticed the same things, and that's kind of why I never worked at another publisher. I never wanted my stuff at another publisher. I just created my own company right off the bat, and we started very slow, but that's part of the reason as to why. I think when people are not understanding as to why I'm so against the current system as it may be, is because I've always been against this system. This is the reason why I made Alterna to begin with. when I first started out, it was just me getting my own book out there, and it was awful. If you know, I mean, it's my first book, and it was really bad. It was the kind of thing that if I submitted it to myself today, I would have told, you know, back then myself to be like, you got a couple more years of work you got to do before you get this out there. But because I did what I did, and I got my own stuff out there, and it sold better than it really should have. But it attracted more people to Alterna to go, well, this is a real publishing company. I should submit my stuff and see if I can get it there. And for a while, I was rejecting people because I was just telling them, look, this is just kind of my own self-publishing label.
Yeah.
I don't really feel comfortable taking on your work. I'm not really, you know, acclimated to the whole system of what it would be to be a publisher. And I kept hearing the same stuff over and over again. And this was about, I'd say 2006, 2007. A lot of talented people over and over again saying they're having a hard time getting into Image, getting into Dark Horse, getting into all the companies that were out at that time. And I figured maybe there's, you know, some strength in numbers, and we could all kind of help each other out. And that's kind of how Alterna got started. So when people are kind of talking about the industry the way they are right now, I'm just looking at that and going, you guys didn't see this the whole time? Because this is what I saw, and this is why I did what I did. It doesn't make any sense to look at the way the industry's going year after year, see that nothing is getting better, nothing is changing. Risks are not really being taken anymore in terms of business-wise. And why would you want to stay in that system thinking it's only going to get better? It's kind of a definition of insanity. It really is. It's so weird. It's so weird to be in a time when comics are everywhere. When you really think about it, they're more popular than they've ever been before, and yet you can't find a comic to save your life. You used to be able to, when we were all growing up, you can go to any store and see comics everywhere. Right now, we should be inundated with comic books to the point where we should be all thinking, if I see another comic book, I'm going to lose my mind. And instead, you can't find them anywhere.
I can't even find the
It's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. I you know, that's where I bought most of my comics when I was a kid. I bought them from like the newsstand. I bought them from you know, 7-Eleven. You know, and they were everywhere. They were bookstores. They were, you know, I didn't even set foot in a comic book shop until like 89 or 90. I think I was, you know, I was old. I'm pretty old, but I was older than 10, and I set foot in a comic book shop. I'm like, oh my god, they got so much more than they had, you know, at the 7-Eleven. But like I was collecting comics for, you know, 7-8 years before that, and you know, I used to buy pretty much everything Marvel put out, and you know, the comics when I first started were like 60 cents, 75 cents. And, you know, my allowance went pretty far. I could pick pretty much everything up. And, you know, then the prices went up and it became cost prohibitive. Even as an adult, like, I'm like, I can't shell out $3, $4, $5 for, you know, 5-minute read. Forget about it. You know, not when I can get Netflix for $10 a month, you know?
Yeah, that's the thing. You know, everyone wonders too. Some of the people that have said that Alterna with the $1.50 comics, we shouldn't have them so cheap, and comics shouldn't be inexpensive, and all this other stuff. And you know, well, people will pay $2 for a coffee. You know, why should a comic be $1.50? People will pay $10 for Netflix. Why should a comic be cheaper? And all this other kind of stuff. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, because of the fact that we have all these other things, because of the fact that life is a little more expensive right now, and because of the fact that there's so many other things competing for our entertainment dollar, that is why comics need to be cheaper. Because they need to be an impulse buy. They need to be instantaneously affordable. And we should have an industry that allows us to sell by volume. And that's how you get your money. If Alterna sold as much as a Marvel book, let's say it's sold like 60,000, we'd be talking about creators making 20 grand an issue.
Yeah, you know? Yeah, that'd be awesome.
We're not talking about something that is completely unsustainable, even at a higher level. We're talking about something that would be very sustainable. And if you had those kind of characters and proper marketing in place, you could possibly be seeing comics selling 500,000 to 1 million units again. But that everything needs to hit in the right way. They need to be affordable, available, and accessible. And because they are none of those three things that you need any good product to succeed, comics are struggling. And instead, we see a system that is constantly predatory on retailers and on consumers, where they look at the small fan base that there is in terms of purchasing fan base for comics, and it gets smaller every year. And they go, well, how do we make more money on this shrinking group of people? Well, you have to increase the cover price. So the more you increase the cover price, though, the more you decrease your, you can't really grow it, because you get someone new who never read comics before, and let's say they want to jump on board, and you get a number one that's $8, and that person's just going to go, forget it. This is insane. And they're not going to think the next issue might be $3 or $4. They're going to think, man, the next issue might be $8. I'm not even going to bother. So it's completely backwards right now, and it's not helping new readers to come on board. And what's scary about that is if we don't get new readers, we don't get new creators. So to me, what dies out first would be creators in comics before the readers die out, and that's a scary thing.
Well, I think part of it's financials. Financials tend to play into it too, because Geeky and I, we worked in comics for a number of years, and we kind of got to the top of the mountain, I guess, in terms of what the holy grail is for webcomics people, which is you get an agent, you get a publishing deal.
We did that.
Yeah, you get a literary agent, you get a publishing deal. That was kind of the holy grail if you were a webcomics person. Not necessarily Marvel and DC, but like Scholastic for a second, that sort of thing. And then we found out what the money was. The
money's worse now.
The money's worse now. When we got, because this is everybody's that does webcomics or whatever. It's like, well, I'm not going to do Marvel and DC. I'm going to go work. I'm going to go do my own thing and self-publish through like Scholastic or First Second or whatever. Now I don't know really what all the rates are now, but when we were talking to people, a first book in advance it could get you $15,000 to $25,000, and that sounds like a lot of money, except you realize that that's potentially 2 years worth of work, and they're not going to give it to you all.
Yeah, you get it in chunks.
You get in chunks. You get in thirds usually. Thirds depends. Some publishers do it in half up front and half on completion, or halfway through, or however they have it worked out. And then your agent gets 15-20%. On top of that, and then you got to pay taxes. You got to pay promotion if you because they don't even do the marketing.
Yeah, a lot of times they don't. You have to get that in your contract.
And now I'm hearing there are young creators, like Tumblr creators, who are basically oh yeah, the advances are $5,000 for 2 years worth of work. What? Why would you do that? Because chances,
you have to do a little marketing yourself. You can do it yourself. You're just doing it yourself anyway.
Yeah, if you're gonna self-publish, just do it. You have a better chance of making more money off of a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo, I think, than you do, going through a mainstream publisher. Not everybody's gonna be like a Raina Telgemeier. That was a kind of a fluke thing that happened, right place, right time.
Absolutely. And what's an even scarier and in some ways, I guess, better for some people, an even scarier thing is the fact that there's a lot of people where if you catch fire with your YouTube channel, you can very well make more money talking about comics than making comics. That's a bit weird. And this is the industry that we're in. So I think there's a lot of people out there, too, that are very upset by the fact that, they're making what they're making on comics, and someone else that talks about them positively or negatively, whatever it may be, could potentially be making 4 to 5 times more than that person made making that comic. And again, this is backwards. This is not how the industry should be. This is not how the comic industry that basically expects you to have maybe another job or two in order to make your comic. That doesn't make any sense. So I just, something has to give, something needs to change, and it needs to start with people accepting some ownership that we can all do something to improve and change and reach a new audience, and we can all have that ability to make those moves. We're not supposed to just sit here and because a lot of people say, well, we're waiting for Marvel or DC to do something and change and make a difference. Don't wait for that to happen. Start doing your own stuff. Start reaching out in different ways and start growing your own audience. Don't just hope and pray that someone else gives you that chance or gives you your big break. Make your own big break, and realize that you're the person that's in control of your own fate. You don't have to be a creator that has to just sit there and wait till someone acknowledges you and gives you a helping hand. You can do a lot of this on your own and really be successful at it.
Yeah, there are people that have been doing it, and I think, you know, it's weird you mentioned about the YouTube and the money situation, because yeah, a lot of, I mean, you know, we'll talk frank about dollars. I have no problem talking dollars about comics. You know, there are a lot of folks working for like IDW and Boom who are making $2,000 a month, you know, $2,500 a month. A lot of them live in LA, you know, or the California. You know, and that's freelance. You're a contractor. You know, and that's if you get paid on time. I'll be honest. Some of the publishers I've worked for, and these were bigger publishers, I didn't get paid on time. You know, I had to wait. I know I did some covers for one publisher. I had to wait like 3 months to get paid. Now it wasn't make or break, but like people don't realize, like, it's not, you're not on salary. You're not, you know, punching the clock at the comic book factory, you know, and getting a paycheck every week. So yeah, I mean, there are, you know, YouTubers. I mean, virtually you can do, you know, doing page work for these smaller publishers. You can probably do just about anything else and make more money. You know, which I think leads to that drain of talent too. Because I mean, if comics aren't selling well, what motivation other than loving comics? What motivation is there? I mean, they're going to go work in movies. They'll work in video games. They'll actually make more money.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? You hear the movies. Oh, the movies are going to, you know, make people want to create comics, want to read comics, all that. No, it's the movies are going to make people want to make movies. The movies are going to make people want to buy the movies and the associated merchandise. The movies aren't going to make someone want to go, I want to just draw for 10 hours a day. That's not what's going to happen. You're going to get people who, I want to be a set designer. I want to be a costume designer. I want to be an actor. I want to be a director. I want to be a screenwriter. And especially when they look at what those fields pay as opposed to the comic industry, they're going to go, yeah, I absolutely want to do those things instead of making a comic. So if the industry does not present itself as an attractive place to work, or one that is giving you more good than bad, why would people want to start working in it? Why would people want to stay in it? And in the same respect, if it's not selling very, very well, if comics are struggling, if the industry is a bit backwards, if distribution is difficult, if publishers and creators are not promoting and marketing their books, all that kind of stuff, it's not going to make more people want to open up stores to sell comic books. And it's not going to make chain stores want to start selling comic books. The whole industry is not making itself the most attractive industry that it could possibly be in order to get people interested in this field, in reading comics, and all of that kind of stuff. This is something that, and I will absolutely admit this, I must be borderline insane to want to be in the comic industry, but it's because I am absolutely passionate and love comics with all my heart, because I've always loved them. But if I did not always love them, and I just came into them when I was 20, 25, 30 years old, I don't really know if I'd want to get into comics in terms of working in this field, let alone reading them. And this is what we have to face, is these are the realistic conversations that are hitting the industry that they don't want to discuss.
Yeah, and it's frustrating because, you know, I think a lot of what's going on with, at least on Twitter and stuff. Now, Geeky, you just ran into some idiots. Didn't you run into some idiots earlier?
About?
Oh, that's why my touch screen's on here. Regarding comics, they were kind of going on.
But no, they were talking about something else. They were talking about, like, fandoms and stuff.
Oh, fandoms, just in general.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, like Geeky with, you know, just to kind of bring her in here, we, you know, it's so weird that everybody's like, you know, talking about like, you know, women in comics, marginalized creators, whatever. And she was actually, we did that, you did that interview a few years ago.
Yeah, we talked about it a few times.
Yeah, and I don't know if people heard this before they were on here now, but they actually cut you out of the conversation completely.
Right, because I refused to say that.
Because you refused to say there weren't any women working in comics.
Yeah.
Because at that point, since we're working in like mainstream publishing and stuff, like all the agents, all the editors, all the decision makers on the mainstream, like the Scholastic side, the First Second, they were all women.
Right.
working
But
in
that was
comics.
even before it got crazy like it is now.
Yeah, yeah.
But back to what you guys were saying about, like, you know, doing it because you love it. I mean, that's how it is now with comics. If you're going to do it, that's why you should just make your own thing anyway, because you're going to have to do it because you love it. You're going to, and I've said it before, I'm going to say it again, do not quit your job to go do comics, because I've heard some people like,
my God, tell
I'm
that
going
story.
to,
Tell that
I'm
story.
going to, I'm going to quit, and I'm going to go and I'm going to move, and I'm going to do comics or art full time. It's like, well, do you have a job offer? No. Okay, well, I said that's not a very good idea. I wouldn't do that. I think I'd just build your own stuff up as you work someplace else. And I was negative, and I was mean, and I wasn't supportive like their other friends. And then they moved, and then they got there, and they couldn't find a job in comics, and they worked retail, and now it's more expensive where they live now, and they don't have any support system because they moved. And you screw up your tablet now, and you can't.
I did.
So they can't.
It's the alcohol.
They wouldn't did it, and I told them not to. But my point is, you know, do it because you love it, but always have a backup plan, because to make money at it's going to take a while, long and short.
Yeah, and people do. Again, the money is just not there, and I think everybody thinks that they're going to get into comics and like get a movie deal. I think that's what that's
exactly what they're trying.
That's
to do.
what we're seeing. I mean, to bring this all around, I guess, you know, kind of what got me thinking about this is, like, you've got so many people that are like, they're not doing comics because they love doing comics. They're doing comics because they think it's going to get them into something else, some other media that pays better, you know. And I'm like, you could just like go get a professional degree or something and go work someplace else and make more money. If
a lot of people have book deals, do another job too. They don't just go by the book deal.
I know, it's crazy.
You draw pretty slow. That's because you're not drawing. You keep talking, and then your tablet's screwed up.
Yeah, my tablet. Like, oh no, now it's
working.
This thing's really touchy. This is a Wacom 13-inch Cintiq, and it's I mean, it's great when I get to work, but it's got touch features on it, and the problem is, like, you know, it's great because I can like zoom in and that. Oh no, I can't. I turned it off. It made a liar at me. But yeah, it's like doing all kinds of weird, goofy stuff. But yeah, a lot of people, they're not really into comics because they want to make comics. They're just biding their time thinking they're gonna get a movie deal and get rich, you know.
Yeah, comics have become a stepping stone for people, you know, so they don't really pour their best work, their best effort into comics. Everything is kind of this half-assed effort, and I think it shows. You know, you got to start at the top. So whenever we talk about things in comics, that of course they have to be more affordable and in more places, and all these other things need to be in place. First and foremost, of course, they need to be good. They need to be of quality, and they need to be something that anyone would want to purchase to begin with. I say it all the time when people are struggling to understand when sales aren't that great. You know, why aren't they great? And it's like, it's two reasons. It's either your marketing is really bad and no one knows about your book, or your book is really bad. And sometimes if they're both reasons, then you're really having a recipe for disaster. So it's always one of two for the most part, especially in comics. If we have comics that everyone knows about, Spider-Man and Batman and comic books and what comic books are. So if everybody knows about what comic books are, well, why doesn't everybody read them? Well, then the answer would be because they're just not good. So if you put out comics that are really good, like we can all think of really classic, great comic stories. We can all think about those. From the past 5 years to 10 years, how many can you think of that are these timeless stories that will last as long as a Watchmen or a Dark Phoenix Saga or a Dark Knight Returns or anything? Even something like a Death of Superman is going to outlast anything that's made from the past 10 years. So this is something that's kind of weird in this industry, where we're not aiming to just hit one out of the park with every swing. We're kind of bunting everything. And then we're wondering why don't the sales go through the roof? It just becomes this weird thing where we're expecting tremendous success for a mediocre effort. I don't understand why people would think that would correlate.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that. It's like, you know, I was just thinking the other day, like the last you know, like great Marvel story, I think that you know, I can remember is like Civil War I.
Right.
You know, I mean, we're talking like 10 plus years ago. It was like the last like actually, you know, kind of epic Marvel crossover and everything since then has been weak sauce. But I think a lot of it comes down to just, you know, these people are just passing through. They're passing through.
Yeah.
They're not really interested. Even like, you know, I saw that image going around with that. Was it the issue of was it Batgirl or whatever, where they had the like the bathtub in front of the door or something? I was like, what?
Yeah, and of course, you know, that's an outlier. I hope. I hope that's not a you get one of those in every issue. But yeah, something like that is it's insane. I was thinking this has to be something that someone just made to mess with people. And then when it wasn't, other than everything being wrong with that, everything that could be wrong, that was like one of those things that would be in a coloring book where you point out, well, what's weird about this picture?
Yeah.
And you circle all the things, and if you can find the 15 things weird about this picture, then you found everything. But other than that, even I'm thinking, what's interesting about why this particular shot, why this composition? This isn't telling a story at all. It's not doing anything to enhance the story for the reader. It's not doing anything to play up the moment. It's completely lifeless. It's just, it looks like someone set up a dollhouse in a very weird way and then just looked at it and drew it. There's nothing engaging about that image. Why is it like that? Why are we making comics that have visuals, which is the strongest part of a comic, is the visual that will instantly grab you? People can forgive relatively poor writing if the visuals will be dynamic and interesting. Then why do we have that in there on a comic that features a character that millions of people know about? Why are we bunting? We should be swinging for the fences. We should be looking to hit a homer every time, and even if we strike out, at least we gave it our best. Why are we doing this weird thing in comics where we think safety is a surefire way to success? I don't understand this. It's something that makes no sense to me.
Well, because that's not the destination, you know. And I mean, really, I think it all comes down. I mean, I think it all comes down to economics. You know, and people blame politics, whatever. I think that just kind of comes with. I think you can trace everything back to the economics. When the money left comics, the professionals, a lot of them left comics, and they went on to better paying gigs. And you started getting people in that really weren't professional, either in terms of quality or just behavior, you know, because you weren't paying for the professionalism. That's my own opinion. You can kind of follow the lack of money, I think.
No, yeah, it's practically fact. Every single thing, you just follow the money and you'll find the root of what is, you know, the cause of it. And in comics, it's the same thing. Again, we have to have a business that's thriving in order to attract people of a high caliber.
Right.
Otherwise, why would they want to work in comics? If you are insanely talented, even look at what Jack Kirby, what he did. He went into animation towards the trail end of his career. You know, so you get people like that practically built the industry, leaving the industry at what many would think is a much better point in time than what we have now. Yeah. Someone like a Jack Kirby, if they wanted to enter into comics today, they'd say, "No, thanks. I'm gonna go into animation or something else." Why are we doing this to ourselves? Other than obviously, you know, the reasons that you've highlighted, which are the true ones. It's economics at play, which are playing into the hands of political leanings, because whenever you look at all this, it all ties in together, but that's the root of it.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, I'm thinking, you mentioned that, I'm thinking, you know, like guys like Jeff Darrow, you know, amazing. They started doing storyboards, you know, and a lot of those guys that were like really big, people were like, well, what happened to these artists? You know, in the 90s, there were a lot of really phenomenal artists. They either moved up like Jim Lee, or they moved out of the industry because the money wasn't there. Some of the older guard, you know, go to comic book conventions, they don't draw comic books. Anymore. You know, they're just doing prints. They're doing commissions. They're making more money doing commissions and prints than they are doing comic book page work. So again, there's no financial incentive. Why should you bust your ass, you know, 12, 16 hours a day for ghetto page rates when you can just, you know, do a couple of conventions a month or one a month, you know, and make more money than you'd make doing an issue of a comic book, you know?
Yeah, you know, and there's no performance bonus. There's no real incentives for a lot of these people. And I think that's, if anything, when Image was formed, it kind of should have taught the big companies, especially Marvel in particular, which really lost in that battle. It should have taught them, we have to get something creator-owned going, because otherwise this is the future and this is going to start to eat away at our market share. And we need to make sure that the most talented guys at our company that just left, the ones that are making us successful, we have to make sure that we have something to compete against them with if that's their model. And if anything, all they did was double down instead on gimmicks to try to get attention, which ended up killing the industry faster.
Yeah.
And it just kind of cycled out into, you know, now Marvel wants to distribute on their own at possibly the worst time they could have chosen to do something like that. And we have the system kind of having a collapse. What I find is even scarier and even weirder in some way is if you look at the numbers from the collapse and you compare them to the numbers of today, the industry was healthier during the 90s collapse than it is right now.
Yeah, a lot of people aren't, you know, it's interesting you mentioned that, because I actually was looking into that in my own. And, you know, you look back, especially look at Comic-Con, you can see like the late 90s, like 97, 98, you know, we had, you know, it looked better than it does now. And that was the downward spiral, you know. And
yeah, that was, the sky is falling and, you know, comics are done. And yet the industry in every possible conceivable way was healthier.
Yeah, yeah. And people just don't want to, they just don't want to admit. You know, I mean, I've never seen pros doubling down on their position too. That like things are fine, things are fine. They're not. They're really not fine. I think
they're not, and they're so not that it's very easy for just the average person to recognize that they aren't. And many people were alive during those times. Even many retailers were alive during those times. A bunch of retailers that I know of that either they don't have a shop anymore or they've had a shop for 30 plus years. A lot of them, if not, I can't think of a single one, honestly, that has not said the same things that we're saying right now. That during the time of the industry going as bad as it was in the 90s, it was still not as bad as it's been going right now. And that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. And I know that people like to then, because there's always a reason, right? There's always that whole, well, people don't want to read. That's what it is. People just don't like to read anymore. Right. You know, that when all else is through, there's that one. There's just no one reads. It's insane. You can't tell me people don't want to read comics or they don't like comics, and then like what you just said about Kickstarter and crowdfunding, and see that it's through the roof. Yeah. And people are bending over backwards to support the things that they want because they're starved of them.
Yeah.
So what's the reason for that? Oh, they just feel like giving money away, is what you're saying. I mean, come on. You know, let's just get realistic. Let's acknowledge that there are problems and let's try to solve them. What has become so bad about acknowledging that there's something that needs to be fixed because things aren't going right? We can't acknowledge that we can be at fault.
Yeah.
We can say that we've made mistakes. We can't say those things anymore. I don't understand.
I think that's it. I think you know, this is where it starts getting like weirdly political, because I almost feel like, you know, they double down on that position because they don't want to give ground to anyone who's been critical of you know, the mainstream comic book industry. You know, like the Comicsgate crowd or whatever. They don't want to give them any ground at all, so they'll just be like, nope, it's all fine here. It's all fine here, and if you say otherwise, you're a bad person.
Yeah, you know, it's really funny you say that too, because 2 weeks ago I had said something along the lines of really trying to rally people to support their local comic shop, and just letting people know, look, you know, you can have whatever, you can like whatever comic you want to like, you can not like whatever comic you don't want to like, but at the end of the day, we are going to lose this industry that we are all fighting about day in and day out if we keep this up. So you have to support your local comic shop. You have to support the creators and the books that you do like, and make sure that people know about them. Make sure that people talk about them. And I said, again, above and beyond, and I expressed that people need to support their shops. I had people telling me off about supporting shops now because they can't stand what I'm saying so much, to the point that if I'm saying support the shops, they're insisting to not support the shops because they don't like me, and whatever the heck I'm trying to support, it must be bad, and it must be something that needs to be stopped. That's the point that some people have gotten to. It's absolutely crazy. And I've never ever, I don't care what your politics are. I don't care what comics you like, what comics you don't like. I care about the industry. I care about people reading comic books. I care about people making comic books. And it's always been what I've said. It's always been what I've done. So for people to take umbrage with that fact, I think it shows the way that things have started to devolve into these weirdly personal battles, that we will hate whatever it is that our enemy loves, and vice versa, no matter what it is.
Is there
that's insanity.
Is there a checklist out there? Because I can never keep track of what we're supposed to hate. What's in vogue. Yeah. It's kind of like the Wiz. Like, nobody in this chat's seen the Wiz, I'm sure, but like they kept changing the color of the Emerald City. Whatever was in vogue, like that minute, they'd change it and then be like, oh, orange is hot now and green's not so hot. Just like it's like a daily thing. It's like if our enemies like it, then it must be bad. It must be bad.
If your enemies preach peace and love, then we must preach war and hate, and that's the equivalent of where some people are at. There's nothing that can unify some people anymore, where we can all stand together and say, okay, yeah, we may not agree on this and that and the other thing, but let's fight together in this. And if anything, that in some deeper level, that's sadder than just comics and entertainment, is that we can't find our common humanity together anymore to acknowledge, hey, we all struggle with things. We all have things we love and care about. And let's fight for those things, and let's make sure that they're around for other people, generations to come. All the people that comics have saved their lives. I mean, you get someone like a Bill Maher saying stupid things. Newsflash: water is wet, and Bill Maher's an idiot.
Yeah.
But you get him talking about things like that, and how comics necessarily are just for children, and that they don't really have any deeper purpose or deeper meaning for people. But meanwhile, comics have saved people's lives. They've saved my life. I know people who've been greatly affected by comic books and would not be here today, or would not be the same person that they are today if not for comic books. And I shudder to think of the fact that if there weren't comic books, it would be like an It's a Wonderful Life situation, where if you remove comics from the equation, what ripple effect does that have for a lot of people? So these things are important, and they do touch people's lives, and they affect them in profound ways. And I don't understand why some people can't distill that and get back to that moment of what made you fall in love with comics. Forget everything about the current system, the current hate, the current fight, whatever is going on, and get back in touch with what do you care about when it comes to comic books, and use that as your motivator to drive you forward.
Yeah, some people like they kind of wonder. I mean, they accuse again, like the comic skaters of just wanting comics to be political. But I'm sitting here like, from where I'm sitting, it looks like you guys basically just got into this to be political, or just to take a shortcut to Hollywood or something. Like, did you, I'm not saying, and this is a, generalization. I don't want to, make a broad generalizations about people, but I'm just saying, like, did you guys actually ever, read comics regularly, or did you just kind of fall into it because there just doesn't seem to be a lot of love there for the medium itself? If you really loved it, you wouldn't be trying so hard to freaking destroy it.
Yeah, exactly. You would do the opposite. You would do whatever it took to make sure that this thing was healthy and thriving and alive for generations. You would do whatever in order to keep that healthy and to keep that around. And instead, you get people who, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's a lack of wanting to acknowledge that they can be wrong, or if it's a vanity kind of thing of, you have to appear like you are the superior person, otherwise, you know, to admit other than that would say that you are something worse than human. I don't know what is going through the thought process there, but it's just, it doesn't need to be that way.
Yeah, I'm thinking it just comes down to just pride. I think there's a lot of pride. I think there's a lot of, you know, they don't want to admit that on their watch the comic book industry kind of came apart at the seams, you know. Especially guys like you know, Joe Quesada, who's been doing it for a long time. But again, you know, the warning bells were going off 10 years ago. Like there was time 10 years ago to do a course correction, and they didn't do it. So now they're just kind of, you know, it's just the decline is happening at a much faster rate, I think, than most people could have anticipated. And it's so weird because it you know, it's in direct contrast to movies doing so well. Like, people want these characters, they want these stories, they just don't want to read about them in comic books because the comic books just aren't delivering, you know, or they're not accessible, you know, or you know, and so somewhere, you know, somewhere Marvel in particular failed. Their movies are making billions at the box office, but they can't sell comic books. You know, I mean, that's a huge problem, and that's got to be something that is really awkward to try to explain. You know, the Disney board meeting. Like, how come our movies are doing so well? How come our movies are doing so well, but we can't? You know, we have to keep canceling Guardians of the Galaxy.
I wonder the list of excuses that they must be coming up with.
Yeah, and I think at some point Disney's probably gonna, you know, just be like, yeah, okay, whatever. This is.
Because you know, does the excuse still fly? Oh, because these characters are just for kids, so adults won't like them. And then they say, well, adults love them to the tune of a couple $2 billion a year when it comes to watching them.
Yeah.
And so what's the reason for the books? Oh, no one reads books. Well, I don't know about that, because you get all these other people here selling millions of copies of books every single year.
Yeah.
And you know, Harry Potter movies, for instance, made the books do even better.
Yeah.
Same thing for even something as you know, as in some cases polarizing as Twilight.
Mm-hmm.
It's managed to make those books sell through the roof as well. So it's not this instance of reading that turns people off. It's so many other things, and I think if we can't pinpoint those reasons, acknowledge them, and realize we have to come up with solutions, otherwise it's you know, the end times are near, essentially, for a lot of different companies and creators and publishers and all that stuff. We're going to just keep doing what we're doing. And businesses plan things out sometimes years in advance in terms of their business strategy. So if we're talking about a case here where it looks like Marvel is going to more or less hand over their publishing responsibilities to IDW, I wouldn't be surprised if they're getting shored up by Disney. Everyone's wondering who put in that $20-something million of an injection into IDW when they've been doing so bad. I wouldn't be surprised if that had something to do with it. But because that's the whole MO of the industry, and the whole thing behind Disney and wanting the IP of the characters is because those are the things that are valuable. Those are the things that are important. The comics are just kind of there.
Yeah.
And I mean, you get one Avengers movie will make more money than the entire industry, not just the entire comic sales from Marvel in a year, but the entire industry does in a year. So that kind of stuff is just, it's got to be crazy looking at that balance sheet and looking at the complete disconnect of, well, why aren't, you know, why isn't the rising tide lifting all the boats? Why are we selling, you know, more wrapping paper with Spider-Man than Spider-Man comic books? That kind of stuff. It's craziness.
Yeah, and I think the day of reckoning is going to come. I mean, regarding, you know, Marvel in particular, because, you know, we've talked about on this podcast before that, you know, Disney's going to be pinching pennies this year, especially. I mean, they overpaid for Fox. They're $1 billion in the hole with the streaming service. They're already laying off in the parks, and the parks actually perform. The parks perform. Marvel does not perform. So I think it is just, at this point, I think Marvel as a comics book publisher is living on borrowed time. I think they know it. I think that's why there's so much bitterness and, you know, gnashing of teeth and lashing out at fans, because they know it's game over. I mean, I don't think a guy like Joe Quesada, if he thought he had a long-term future would be making some of the dumb comments he's been making on Twitter, antagonizing fans and stuff. Like, he wouldn't. I think he knows there's no future. I think he's going to ride out his contract, and he knows after that it's over. It's over.
And then I think he's expecting a pretty good severance package.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't have to do a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo, so he doesn't have to exactly have any goodwill that he has to give to anyone he doesn't want to give it to. And that, because that's what it's looked like to me for about 2 or 3 years now, since it's becoming very bad with a lot of the creator interactions on social media. Is it reminds me of whenever you hate working at a place, and you start to not care anymore, and you start to just say to hell with everything and everyone, and I don't need this job, and you can go shove it. And that's how these people are behaving. And that's how the interactions come across. You have less patience, you have less professionalism, all that kind of stuff. And it shows. And it's sad that this is the place that we've come to, because at the end of the day, not only does the comic shops hurt and creators and everything else, but future generations of people looking to create comics, it's going to impact them as well, and what that means for comics in the future, it's a sad thing. So that's why people have to really embrace the fact that creator owned is where to go, and indie is where it's going to be at, and you just gotta have some faith in that, and then realize that comics as an industry are hurting, but people still love comic books, and it's still very much a practical and a live industry in a different sense, not necessarily the traditional sense.
Well, that's one thing we're hoping to do more on this channel, because we've had some success with self-publishing our own stuff, and it's just kind of help, I guess, equip would-be creators to make their own stuff, because I think that really is the only option. I think this is really going to be the only option, because those jobs working for somebody else are getting harder and harder to come by, and eventually they're just going to dry up completely, I think.
Yeah, and I think it'd be really smart for comic shops right now, especially the ones I've been talking to that have been having decently good years the past couple of years, and it's mostly because they've been diversifying their product selection. They've been embracing their communities and having events and having all kinds of fun things. Like they'll have a Meet Spider-Man event, and it'll be for the kids, and they'll have Spider-Man come in, like a great cosplayer who's good with people, and they'll have Spider-Man autographing comics and things like that, and taking pictures with the kids and getting them into the hobby in different ways, that not just here's some new comics every Wednesday and buy whatever looks interesting to you. They're going above and beyond, which is what you need to do in this day and age right now. And especially if the publishers aren't helping you out with great books or great marketing, a store, in order to survive, still has to do the things that a store needs to do, which is advertise, market, have sales, all that kind of stuff, and embrace community building and become a part of that. And some of the stores are doing a wonderful job at that.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what we're seeing now, just even with individual creators too, is the creators that are going to make it are going to be the ones who can actually interface with real people. You're not going to be able to if you're going to be your own marketing machine, your own promotional machine, you're not going to be able to just walk into a seat that's been warmed for you. You're going to have to go out and build that audience yourself, and that's hard. And some people just aren't, they're just not up for it. They might be phenomenally talented, but they're not actually able to interface with people, and you can kind of see that with, even again, to go back to webcomics, you see people that maybe their art's not as good as a Marvel or DC artist, but they made a connection with people.
Yeah, that's going to be a big part of it. Even I've said this for a while now too, with crowdfunding. They're not so much in buying your product, investing in your product, as they are buying into you, investing in you. If you're completely unlikable and they don't have any trust in your ability to create that product or deliver it on time or anything along those lines, anything that you've promised, you're going to notice that people will either not fund you or they won't fund your next project. So if you have a project right now that you're doing and it's very late and you have no communication with your backers, they are completely left in the dark, and you're just left wondering, well, what's going on? Am I ever going to get the thing that I backed? That's going to impact your next project if you put that on there for crowdfunding. So there's all these kinds of things that I think a lot of people are testing the waters in different ways, but there's different hurdles for every single thing that they do. And I think a lot of people that are great at maintaining that communication with their customers, their fans, all those types of people, I think they're going to be the ones to really succeed when this industry evolves the way that it is.
Yeah, I think the days of being able to just hide at your art desk, and just kind of put stuff out there and it just magically goes to market, I think are ending. It's just, again, it's evolution. It's not death. It's just evolution. But I think this version of the comic book industry, I think we're definitely in the, kind of reminds me of childhood's end. I've used that before, where it's the end of this life cycle, but there definitely is more to come for some people, not everybody.
Yeah, and that's a part of the whole evolutionary process when it comes to business in particular. If you can't adapt, if you can't be not only more hardworking than the next person, but more clever than the next person, you're gonna most likely die out. And is it right? Is it wrong? It doesn't necessarily matter. It's just that's the way it is. So you either have to acknowledge that that's the way it is and move forward as best as you possibly can, or you have to find another line of work. And it's just as blunt as that.
Yeah, and I think right now you have a lot of people lashing out, on Twitter, because they know. Like, it's. I mean, I said to someone the other week, and again, this isn't like making a correlation between like disease and whatever, but I said it's kind of like somebody being terminally ill, and you remind them every day that they're going to die, and that's, I think, what's going on, and they're not going to be real happy with you. They're not going to be real nice. They don't want to hear it. They know, and I think that's kind of what's going on in comics right now. Is these people know that they're living on borrowed time. They know that the industry is changing. They know a lot of them aren't going to be able to jump ship to whatever's next, and they're lashing out. That's my personal opinion on it, and they're trying to delay the process, I think, as long as they can. But it's you can't stop it. It's already happening.
Yeah, it's something I think that they are aware of, but I don't think they are aware that there is a solution and that they have power to do something about it. I think they very much feel powerless, and I think when people ever feel powerless in a situation, they automatically start lashing out. They start looking for someone else to blame. Mm-hmm. They start looking for, well, it's the fault of this. It's because of X, Y, and Z. I think right now we're seeing a lot of people that are blaming the whole Comicsgate thing for, well, that's the reason now why things are going so bad. Things were going bad before this kind of stuff was happening. This is the whole Comicsgate thing to me is it's a symptom of what's been occurring. It's not necessarily the cause. And because we continuously want to ignore the causes, we're always in this loop of causing pain for ourselves in this industry, and not realizing, look, we just have to understand people will have an immense capacity to forgive when someone is willing to seek that forgiveness. If someone like a Joe Quesada was like, hey, look, we screwed up. We're going to try to get back to basics, and we're going to try to take some ownership and do what's right by the fans that have stood by us and supported us for decades. And we're really sorry, guys. Sorry. That's all we can say, and we're going to try to do better. Holy smokes, would that completely change so many people's opinions of Joe Quesada. Yeah. But that would take him admitting something, and you know, potentially really being a very risky move for him as well. But it's a move that, if the industry was to then collapse, Joe would be in a really good place in the hearts and minds of people, and people would look out for him, and they would take care of him in case he needed that help. But doubling down on the treatment of people that have supported you, and that you owe them for your livelihood, essentially, that's the completely wrong way to go.
Yeah, and that's what I think shocked me so much about this, is seeing, you know, Joe, who used to, at least from what I was saying, used to be a pretty good guy. He used to do the, you know, the Cup of Joe and all that, and you know, under his run, I think, you know, early 2000s Marvel, you know, early to mid 2000s Marvel was pretty decent. I think it was pretty decent.
Yeah.
That's when we saw the first, you know, Ultimate Spider-Man Ultimate books came out, and I thought it was pretty good. And then, yeah, just like he just acts like a guy who doesn't care anymore. He's just like, he's done. He's out. He knows he's out. You know, he doesn't have to pretend to like this job anymore. You know, and there just is a lot of that from a lot of these pros. They're just very, very salty now, and there's a lot of blame, and you know, pumping their fist at the sky. You know, blaming the fans and blaming this and blaming that, and they're not looking in the mirror.
Yeah, and that's the place where the biggest change always needs to occur, and that's the only one you can ever have control over. And if every single person was to acknowledge that, we'd be in a much different place right now. And this, obviously, this goes past even the comic industry. This is just life in general. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think when people start to feel powerless in any situation, they'll always start to lash out. And it's unfortunate that this is happening to industries that we love, and entertainment that we love. And everywhere you look, it's so weird. It's weird to see. You know, we should all. I remember that, and this isn't even that long ago. I remember being the only time I was ever upset as a publisher was when a comic news site spoiled the story without providing a spoiler warning. That was the only time. Because I never really get upset at bad reviews, because that's an opinion, and people have a right to that, and we have a right to hear it as well. So if we're doing something wrong, if you know, if I hear one bad review, okay, that's that person's opinion. 2 bad reviews, oh, okay, I'm going to take a look at this. 3 or more bad reviews, and it turns into, all right, I have to reconsider what's going on here. Especially if it correlates with the sales being poor and customers also not enjoying the book. But that used to be the what a bad day in comics looked like, is you got a couple bad reviews, a spoiler everywhere, and you were like, what is going on? Why would they do that? Now it's a those look like normal light days compared to the things that people are going through in the industry, and most of the time, because I hate to say it, because they bring it upon themselves in some ways, and there's nothing that needs to be fixed that can't be fixed. So I don't understand when people want to revel in that kind of defeatism, because there's no point to it. And if you love comics at all, like you said, you would have to not love comics to basically be happy with the way things are right now. Yeah. You know, no matter what side that anyone's on. I think I asked somebody this a while ago when all of this was brewing. They said, look, what if this whole thing ended, the whole Comicsgate thing ended today? We still have an industry in turmoil. We still have problems that are there. What could we do differently? What could we do to improve the way things are? And they didn't have an answer. And it made me just think, so you don't want things to improve. You don't care if they improve. You don't want change. You don't want a solution. You just want to be angry. So if you just want to be angry, we have no solution here. Yeah. So that's not going to solve anything, because we still have very real problems. And this is something that is so, it's just so odd to see when it's not just people who are, because a lot of people think it's just the fans. Oh, the fans, toxic fandom, and all this other crap, that gets thrown around to kind of shield themselves from criticism or change or acknowledgement of fault. You know, so it's easy to just throw out toxic fandom, and that kind of encapsulates the whole thing. It's a catch-all, but it's not. It's a lot of that is the result of growing disdain in a strained relationship between creators and companies and consumers. And without the consumers, I hate to tell it to everybody in the industry, but we don't have anything anymore. If we don't have anyone consuming the comics and purchasing them and buying them and supporting it, we don't have jobs. So we have to decide, what do we do? Do we listen to people? Do we acknowledge that they have a point? Because some people think, oh, well, then you're just playing up and pandering to fans. And okay, so if you don't want to listen to them on everything, that's absolutely normal and understandable. But you have to compare. Are they criticizing things that correlate with lack of sales? Because if those two things coincide, then you have to take into some consideration that, well, what they have to say is valid. You can't just keep saying, nope, the sales are horrible, but you're wrong. It doesn't. If they have to be right, if the sales are horrible and there's a lot of complaining and a lot of unhappiness, then the fans are right. So you have to listen to that, and that's the only way that you're going to be able to course correct.
Yeah, and I don't think there really is a strategy for a lot of these people. I think they're just kind of like, they're just kind of winging it. You know, they're like, we just you know, right now we just want to tell people that they're wrong, because we do, and then we'll figure it out later. You know, I don't think there is any strategy if you know, they win, quote unquote win, because they're like, win what? You've nuked the whole damn country, like,
right?
There's nothing left.
And then later never comes, because there's nothing there to build upon what later was supposed to build upon.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't think I think it's just a very short-sighted, and it's kind of what got, you know, everybody into this in the first place, was, you know, short-sightedness, and then not realizing that, you know, again, 10 years ago you could have stopped this, and you didn't do anything about it. I mean, hindsight's 20/20, of course, but you know, I don't know.
Yeah. So we got somebody in the stream. Hector here is saying the stream got surprisingly depressing. So let me give some.
Let's wrap up with some upbeat.
Yeah, let me give some hope to Hector here. While it's important again to acknowledge that yes, things are bad in some ways, there's a ton of things that are going absolutely wonderful in comics. You just have to look around and look at the indie scene in particular. Obviously, if you love characters that have been a part of your life for your whole life, it doesn't necessarily impact them. But comics as a whole, especially if you were an aspiring creator, now is the best time that you could possibly ever ask for to want to get involved in making comics. You have more control over your own fate, over your property, your characters, all that kind of stuff. Crowdfunding is incredible right now because people are starved for good comics, good stories, interactions with creators that are meaningful to them, and feeling like they're a part of something that matters. And that's what crowdfunding brings to people. That's what supporting creators directly. That's what interacting with creators directly. That's all that kind of stuff. That's what that brings. And now's the best time on earth for that. There's never been a time like this in the entire industry to do what's being done right now. And that's really something amazing. So if anyone at all is being depressed about the current industry or about this conversation about the downturn of things, there's so much to look forward to because of this whole thing, we're going to see amazing new creations enter the world that never would have had that chance before. And that's going to create the next Ninja Turtles, the next Walking Dead, the next Spider-Man, the next Batman, because of all of that opportunity that people are now taking advantage of to their fullest.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think right now is a great time to break into comics, but you're going to have to think about it differently than the past. You're really going to have to think about like what you're going to do on your own. And there's so many opportunities out there to put your stuff out there. I mean, when I tried to break into comics, once upon a year. It was basically you'd Xerox your samples and you'd send them off to editors. You would schlep your samples to conventions, and you did not have access directly to audiences like you do today. I mean, you can literally tomorrow put something up on the internet and get immediate feedback.
Yeah, and no other time could you have done that really, other than the past probably 5 years or so. And that's incredible. Before you used to be just alone in your with your drawing desk and then just hope that someone even opened the packet you sent along to them, among the hundreds of other packets that they have to look at. And then you hope that maybe in 6 months you hear a response and all that kind of stuff. And now you can get this instantaneous feedback and you can begin improving and working on something meaningful very quickly, as opposed to, this long wait and this long kind of, well, what do I do? Do I just pick up and go and fly out to a show or to a headquarters and try to kiss up to an editor and hope that they give me 5 minutes and all that kind of stuff? It's a whole different thing now where you can just pave your own way. And as long as you are willing to put in the time and the work and build slowly and steadily, you'll find success. And just realize that that's all possible. And it's a great time for that.
Yeah, definitely is a good time to start making stuff. And that's one thing we want to do on this channel is try to help people make their own stuff. So that's going to be something going forward, I think, in 2019 that we're going to try to do more of here. Again, our initial mission goal was never to be a complaint channel. We didn't want to constantly be complaining about pop culture, but it is kind of all ties together, though. If you don't like what's being produced, go make your own stuff.
And I don't view either bringing up complaints or faults as something that is detrimental and cannot be turned into a positive situation. I know there's some people that they don't see a positive out of what, they can just highlight a negative, but there's nothing good that comes out of just doing the complain thing and not offering and injecting new ideas into that. And it's always important to have those conversations, and that's how I find that you don't get into situations like this where you have two people talking about how things have gone wrong for almost an hour. Instead, you have people talking about, okay, what could we do right? And you have to acknowledge, obviously, what has happened, what has not been successful, what is successful, and hopefully do more of what works and do less of what doesn't. And that's it's an important process of growing, is to have that conversation.
Yeah, definitely. And hopefully, I do see, it's, we almost gave up on doing comics completely, and it wasn't until the last year or so that we saw some changes in indie comics. We're like, God, it might be possible again to do it, and but we almost walked away from comics completely because of the state of the industry and all that. So it is an exciting time to be in comics. It's just it's going to be very different than it has been in the past, and you're going to have to. I think you're going to have to work harder, I think, than a lot of artists in the past did, because not only are you going to have to focus on your creating the comics, but you're going to have to be the marketer, you're going to have to be the PR person, the social media person, but I think the rewards can be pretty great going forward.
Yeah, it's just understanding what needs to be done, understanding you need to diversify a bit with what kind of hats you're wearing if you're going to start doing this on your own. And understanding that the rewards are going to be there. They might take a little more time, but they're definitely going to be there. And just be appreciative. That's all I could say to people. Is I'm very appreciative for the readers that we have, the creators that I've worked with over the years, and without them, I would not be in the situation I'm in today. And just have an understanding that that's at the heart of it. That's what matters the most, and that's what's going to enable you to move forward, is working together, working with other people, and acknowledging and being grateful for the people that have supported you. And if as long as you can kind of keep that in check and be a little bit humble about it, you'll be fine for years to come. And this is the way I think things are going to start going.
Okay, all right. Well, we're going to wrap this one up, Peter. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And Peter, of course, you can go to alternacomics.com.
Yeah, you can go to alternacomics.com, learn about the books, or you can go to orderalterna.com as well and order direct from us. And hopefully your local comic shop has them in stock as well.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. Geeky has actually left the building, but we'll be back with more. Geeky will be back on. And I'll be finishing up this drawing I'm working on right now. I'm hopefully tomorrow I might speed this one up and post it. Kingdom Hearts 3 comes out tomorrow, so everybody's real excited about that. And we're going to do more videos talking about comics, making your own stuff and art and all of that on CLOWNFISH TV. So stay tuned. All right, guys. Thank you very much.